Welcome to Accounting High.
I was a sole practitioner for a decade. I can complain a lot about the accounting industry, but I will say the opportunities feel limitless. I was in one mode for a very long time and decided I'll just do something different today. And even had I not found a partner to do this with, I still could have done that. So if there's somebody listening and maybe they're on the fence about starting their own firm or redoing things in their firm, you can do it. If I did it, you can do it.
May I have your attention, please?
From cloud accountancy way back to desktop accounting advisory and tech apps adopt. Next when we drop, cause you know we don't stop. It's 24/7 on the Accounting Highlight. TikTok clips don't watch, just some shitty tax talk. Cleaning up accounting with a bucket and a mop. Then we lean back and nod cause the class is about to start at Accounting High. Scotty, OKR. Accounting High. Accounting High. Counting High, OKR. Counting High. Counting High, OKR. Counting High.
Introducing the star of our show.
Scotty and Alicyn.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Class is in session. Alicyn McLeod coming at you live from Atlanta. This is Atlanta Tax, not to be confused with Atlanta Taxes. This is the Atlanta Tax. We've already had Atlanta Taxes on our show. We got the Atlanta Tax from the heart and the home of Georgia. Thank you for joining me today, Alicyn.
Thanks, Scott. It's lovely to be here.
I want to be very clear to our students. It's Alicyn, not Alicyn. Alicyn. That is Alicyn. I love the spelling of your name. That was the first thing I noticed when I saw you on Twitter. I said, "Ooh, she's got a really cool way of spelling Alicyn. This is dope." Alicyn, I met you several years ago. You made a name for yourself on Twitter. You are the mother of Twitter, is what I say. You're the mother of tax Twitter. You've brought everybody together. You're the reason for the tax Twitter retreat. You're the reason for the happy hours. You've brought community to this world. And then you just take a step back and watch it happen. It's not about you. That's what I love about all of it. You're bringing people together. You're creating moments and creating connections, and then stepping back to let people enjoy that. That's the vibe I got at the tax Twitter retreat, and that's the vibe I got anytime I see you. It's all about bringing the people together, and it's all about the people. So you're here for the people, and thank you for joining me today.
That's a very kind summary, Scott. I appreciate that.
I hope it's fairly accurate. I hope if you feel that and you know that the importance you are. I called you a legend on Twitter recently. You're a living legend.
I don't know about that. We might be taking it a little too far. But...
All right. Let me back up then. Let's just at least now let's ground our guests, our students here, and tell us how you got into accounting in general in the first place. You're a CPA.
Yeah.
How did you end up here in this space?
Incrementally.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no businessy or accounting people in my family. And I'm old enough that I grew up in the days before YouTube. I grew up in the days before you could even leave a message for somebody on a telephone if they weren't home. It just rang and rang and rang. So there wasn't really any accounting or business type role models for me to be following. But when I was in college, trying out different majors along the way, I did end up working for a staffing company, actually. And I really liked kind of being part of working in a business. And I got to work with their accounting department for a little bit. And it was very brief, but it was enough for me to think I could do this. And so the college that I was at did have an accounting degree as an option. It was a business degree with an accounting emphasis. And I said, well, this is for me. This is what I'm going to do. And then that morphed into getting my BBA in accounting and then an MBA, working for a couple of CPA firms, and then ultimately starting one myself.
Tell me about the firms that you worked at or your experience there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm from Augusta originally. I worked at a couple firms there and then moved to Atlanta more years ago than I'll say out loud. And then, no, I'm just kidding, probably about 20 years ago. And I worked for
You've
probably
already kind of dated yourself with all the tech talk and
I
the
did. That's true.
voicemail thing. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. So I worked for probably about 2 or 3 firms in Atlanta. The firms I worked at Augusta is interesting. Like one was horrible. The first firm I worked for was very soul crushing. It was really bad. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. The next firm I worked at was a 180. It was so fun. It was, you never knew what was going to happen for the day. You might have something on your schedule. One of the partners pops in the office and says, oh, grab your things. We're going to go visit a client or go visit a prospect. And they were really big on taking folks with them and bringing people along. I did a lot of monthly accounting work then. We didn't kind of call it that. We called it write-up. But this was really back in the day when write-up was clients would give you their paper documents and you would key them into a specific accounting software, not QuickBooks Online, because it was very rudimentary then. And then you would print out their financials and you would take your red pencil and you would mark notes for the reviewer. Yeah, all the things. With that kind of work, you get good at it really quickly. You have 12 shots a year to figure it out. And so there was a lot of autonomy, a lot of learning, a lot of autonomy for someone who was fairly young and at a fairly entry level kind of role. So then a few years, and at that point I was getting my CPA license too. So studying for that exam. So my first few years in public accounting where I saw like really, really good setting and I saw a really, really bad setting. So that kind of stuck with me. Yeah.
And it sounds like the key difference between those two firms was pretty much the leadership and the culture around the way they approached everything. You're doing the same things in both firms, but it's night and day difference for you, especially as a young professional, to see, wow, this could actually be fun. It doesn't have to just be soul crushing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just choices that were made by the folks that ran the firms, right?
Yeah. So where did that lead you then? After?
Yeah, so from there I moved to Atlanta, and unfortunately it wasn't that. And I think if there's anyone younger listening to this, they'll truly understand what I'm about to say. I really loved that second job. It just didn't pay enough money. It didn't pay enough money, and so I moved to Atlanta, and I immediately nearly doubled my salary. And the cost of living was not double, right? So It was just an immediate win for me, and of course, Atlanta is pretty much my home now, so I don't think anything of it. But I would not have otherwise left Augusta, I don't think. I just wouldn't have picked up, but I had to.
So the second firm, they just weren't paying enough. They had the greatest of cultures. Everything was great, but it's still about money. You still got to make some money.
Yeah, I still had to pay rent. So that firm, and I'm sure it's still a good firm, but funny enough, they would pay you weekly. I have never heard of this before.
Really?
Yes,
I see that in restaurants and stuff.
But. Yeah, right. And they didn't have direct deposit either. So there's physical check in your inbox this was forever ago though. Sure. But
they were doing write-up. They were using red pens. Legit. Yeah.
But on the other hand, they were also reviewing tax returns entirely online. We didn't really print tax returns other than to give clients their paper copy if they wanted.
Oh, okay.
So in some ways they were quite a little bit more advanced, but yeah, it wasn't really that firm particularly was cheap. It was just that market at that time, and I could be replaced by somebody that they didn't have to pay more for. So maybe they're sad to see me go, but not sad enough to pay me more. So,
but that was still a good lesson for you to learn too. So you're getting paid double now. You're in the big city, bright eyes, big city.
Absolutely.
You made it.
I started working at a mid-sized firm in Atlanta. That's pretty well known. Probably, yeah, anybody in the Atlanta that knows this space would know that name. And I worked there for a few years. And when I came there, I had done, again, that write-up work, and I'd also done some tax work, but they separated that out because it was a big city and a big firm, and they didn't have folks that did both. So they just shoved me in the tax department. And between that firm and a second one, I did tax for probably another 7 or 8 years without really doing any monthly accounting. We'll get to it later, but I started back in the monthly accounting space a couple of months ago, and it's been different.
We'll get there later, but you were primarily doing tax. Tell me about a tax season at this firm. You made 8 years there too. It's a pretty long time to be working at one firm.
Yeah. Well, so I worked there for about 3 years. I went to another Atlanta area firm for about 4, and then had my I call it my midlife crisis. Now I'm actually in midlife, but I just quit that second firm. Like, it was right after the Great Recession. Morale was really down. I was just burnt out. It was just too much for me. And I was like, I'm going to quiet. I'm not even going to quiet quit. I'm just going to quit. And so I went back to the other firm that I had worked for previously in Atlanta. And I did some contract work with them for a couple of years while I was doing my own firm, getting that started.
This is typical for me. This is typical for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We get bored after a certain amount of time too, maybe 3 or 4 years. And then it's like, kind of need something new. I need to refuel. Because at first I thought I heard 8 years. I was like, that's actually a long time for somebody I think you have an entrepreneurial mindset. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have that mindset to where you want to grow as an individual. You want to grow something.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to getting paid.
That too. Yeah. That's growth.
Yeah, it is. It's financial growth, right? So with the first firm in Atlanta, I'd been there a few years, and it had pros and cons, ups and downs. I wasn't looking for anything else though, but a gentleman that I worked with, as he was a manager, I was a senior, he went to this other firm. And so he's like, hey, come have lunch with me and one of my partners. And he, kind of pulled me away, and there was a little bit more money and there was a promotion. And I was like, well, okay, then, I will take that. And it wasn't, in retrospect, was it enough money? Was it enough of a promotion? I don't know. But, when you're at that level, those things matter. They matter a lot. Yeah. So then I moved to that second firm as a manager, and I did that for about 4 years. And that was 2008 to 2012. So that was right when I started there was summer of 2008. Within a few months, banks were starting to fold. Yep. And then, of course, so then clients started to, if they had an audit, now they wanted a review. If they had a review, they didn't want anything. If they didn't have anything, they went bankrupt. Like, clients were falling down left and right, even Big Four, laying off partners. It was not a very steady time to be even an accountant, which we think of as a steady career path. But so going through that, experiencing that, and that simultaneously, that was the rise of the smartphone. So that was when, and I saw that progression, and we take it all for granted right now that we have accessibility to anybody, anytime, in any way. But we didn't. When you went home, maybe you took a laptop home with you, maybe you took a laptop out to a client's office. But once you shut that down, you were done for the day. But all of a sudden, you see it at the partner level. I can recall this at the other firm. The partners all had their BlackBerries, and there was a special BlackBerry server, and it was a very big deal that they could get emails on their phone. But then that's trickled down. And by the time, it's 2012 and I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, and I just quit without any plan, like just for mental health reasons. Everybody, the interns had their work emails on their phone. It was crazy.
Everybody did. By 2012, that was the rise of the cloud too. Mm-hmm. So the rise of smartphones, and then you're starting to see the rise of the clouds with Alicyn McLeod. But let's unpack some of that. You quit for mental health reasons. Did you want to recenter and figure out what your next phase was of your career?
I don't even think I thought that far ahead. All I knew was the recession had taught me, I think there's a misconception that having a W-2 job is somehow steady and secure and safe. And if I didn't think it before, the recession taught me that's absolutely not true in our own industry too. So I felt insecure about keeping my job. Even fast forwarding a few years later, we had a round of layoffs in February of 2009. So, and I didn't get let go, even as a newer person, but it was just kind of always there in the back of my mind. That summer, there were no raises, there were no new hires, but they were starting to bring on more clients, do more work for existing clients, et cetera. So we were all working more for the same pay, at least in my case. And it was just more and more and more. And again, you have more accessibility, right? And then it's hard. It's not like that was the beginning of all that. So there were no mental health best practices about turning your phone off or,
Nobody talked about mental health then.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. And I think I was just so burnt out. I had no mentorship. I had no role models really. I had no one to really go to and say, hey, and maybe I could have had, but I didn't know that if that was the case. So it was just me and my thoughts, and I was just miserable every day. Maybe I was in a bit, if quiet quitting is even a thing, but I would find myself after that tax season So I guess that was April 2012. I would find myself just sort of coming in late, leaving early, not returning client calls, like doing things that even if I hate a job is not like me.
Sure.
Right? Like I might not like it, I might be looking for something else, but I will do the job while I'm here. But I wasn't doing those things. And I was just like, I can live in my car. It'll be fine. I don't know another way to put this, but I felt broken.
Yeah. Yeah. Your spirit was broken somewhere along the way because you're a sunshine. I always see you as all smiles and a sunshine and a bright person that if something could break your spirit, it could be this whole blow up of what's happening now. We've got access to everything all the time. And do we need it? Like you used to have that separation and be able to separate yourself from work. And now you're starting to see this all blend together and none of it really mattered to you anymore. None of it made that much of an impact to you, at least, or maybe you didn't feel like you were making a big impact on the clients at that point. So you quit. What was next? What was the plan?
There was no plan, but what did happen was, I had seen in my career where folks would leave the industry and then come back for various reasons. Maybe they went to industry and came back into public accounting. Maybe they stayed at home with their children for a while, tried something else entirely different and came back. And what I saw when that happened was that folks would be out of touch with tax law changes. They would be out of touch with platform technology changes. And it would be really hard for them, not always, but sometimes to get back into that groove. So what I did was I went to the firm I had left before, the first firm I worked at when I came to Atlanta, and a few other folks. And I said, I'm trying to take a break, but I don't want to stay out of this forever in case I come back to it. Does anybody need any contract work? Like, I can't work for you 40 hours.
Were you living out of your car at that point?
No, I was not. I was not financially insecure. But I thought, if I can work 10, 20 hours a week doing some contract work. And so I did get lucky there. The firm that I had previously worked at, they had some attrition. They had a big need. And they're like, yeah, we'll take, whatever you want to work. 10 hours, 50 hours, we'll take it. Just come on and we'll pay you by the hour and it'll be fine. So I thought that was going to be a few months. I did that for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I did that for about a year and thought, is there something else I might rather do than go into accounting? And I thought, I really like this work. I like helping people this way. Taxes especially can be super scary for folks. Mm-hmm. And I like being able to reassure them, dig into the details, whether I'm doing it or supervising it being done, but really help people in this way. So I thought, well, maybe I just like it if I just work for myself. And so for about, So I was like, well, what are the things I don't like? I don't like charging by the hour. I don't like, having to work 60 hours a week. I don't, and I thought, well, if I work for myself, I can change all that, right? The last year I was with that firm, that was when I was starting to build up my own firm, which they were totally fine with, God bless them. And so, yeah.
So you can help people in your terms and in your own way.
Yeah.
And you can do that. Did you at the point see the freedom of doing that from anywhere? Did you have an office or how did you envision that would look?
That was the summer of 2012. I think that's right. I might be getting my years mixed up, but I think that's right.
You said from 28 to 2012.
Oh, that's right. 2014. Yeah. So it was probably the summer of 2014. That's when that sounds about right. So that's probably either 2013, 2014, that time. That was when I was holding myself out as here I am, Alicyn McLeod, CPA, come get your taxes done, etc. And I have worked from home ever since then. For about a year, I did have an office and I would try to commute myself from my home office to my actual office. And it was just, I thought I needed that to be legit, which at this point, no one thinks that, or most people don't think that. Certainly.
The mindset that you have. Yeah. Like where a client's going to meet me.
Right. And then you find, also there was the rise of the co-working spaces and the fractional rental spaces. And so that's so much more prevalent now than it was then. And then, being in the Atlanta area where there's just massive traffic, people seem to, what I found out over the years is people really like that maybe you're local and you're part of the community, but they don't want to get in their car and come to you. So, folks tend to be fine using phone, using portal. Over time, I, did more with video, and video is pretty much my first go-to for pretty much anything now. It's rare that I get out and go see a client.
So you started your own practice. Did you have any inspiration from anybody out there? Were you even on social networks at that point, or like going looking out there, poking your head out in this wide world? Because I don't think it was that big at that point.
I don't even know if it was or not because I didn't know about it. I had, again, when I started working for myself, I had no clients, no connections, I had nothing just other than
Did you have any friends?
yeah, I had friends. I had friends. I had people that were happy for me, but I had no one who I knew that had done this thing, and I could model, learn best practices, learn what not to do. It was just me every day, hoping that I would get something right, testing things out. It was very busy, but at the same time, it was very slow. So
Sure.
I was, yeah, not so. I guess another way to say that was my activities were not necessarily always revenue generating.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And so you're growing in practice, you're doing taxes primarily? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all Atlanta tax. And now let's fast forward a little bit and get into how the social networks kind of impacted your growth too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I came across everything. I can tell you this, it's been years ago, but I do remember I was sitting down with my marketing advisor, and I'd had a couple of iterations of my practice at that point. I'd been solo. I was a tax partner at a very small firm for a few years, still have a great relationship with all those folks, and then realized I needed my own branding, my own marketing. And I sat down with a really good marketing advisor, and we talked about some things. And I had grabbed a Twitter handle. I don't know why. Because I was never on Twitter, and it was Atlanta Tax.
Did you
So
try Atlanta taxes first, or was this before pre Trevor McCandless?
I I don't know who came first. You have to look at our
Is that
accounts. It will show on our accounts, but I anyway, I had that Twitter handle, and they were asking me all my social media accounts and everything. She's like, that's your URL. It's Atlanta.tax. And I said, that's the name of your firm. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. She says, if you don't buy that URL, I will buy that URL. So really the Twitter handle came first, and then the business name came second.
Okay. And that's the brand, though. That was like she sort of branded with that. Like the Atlanta tax, I see a big smiling face of Alicyn when I think of Atlanta tax. And there's plenty of people in Atlanta to serve. So you found your niche. It's a geographic niche. You're working with people in Atlanta. And now you poke your head out into this world of Twitter. How did that feel? What was that like?
Well, I can remember the first time I said anything, I got smacked down.
Isn't that how everybody that's everybody's first experience on Twitter? Get smacked down.
Well, I think if you already know how social media works, you come from another platform, you can probably do pretty well on any other platform. But
Sure.
I'm not really, I wasn't really big into Facebook or LinkedIn or anything like that. It's hard for me to remember too much because it's been a few years, but I would follow some folks and I would read what they wrote. I think there's a lot of people that sort of lurk. I was a lurker. And I said something about something, and I won't name any names because we have a good relationship, but somebody commented like, well, that doesn't work that way because blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh gosh, like this is out there. The whole world can see it. Oh my good. Like, and nobody even noticed. Right.
But that's not how you feel. It made you feel like, oh, wow. Like, and you may have questioned even going back on again too.
I probably did, but I'm also I'm more resilient than that, I guess.
Okay, all right.
And I also realize like we're so wrapped up in what people are thinking about us, but the truth is we're also busy with our own lives. We're not thinking about other people.
Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they might be.
No, and again on the social media, like you think, oh gosh, it's out there forever, and I'm an idiot. Like it's just it's buried in somebody's feed before they even log into the app. Right? Like no one sees half of what, or I don't know. There's got to be some very high percentage that people are just not even seeing it.
So, as I said in the beginning of the intro of the episode, you're a very compassionate person. So, did you start to feel that energy in Twitter and feel like, well, is there a way I can help? Because that's sort of the vibe I got. My first impressions of Alicyn is somebody that's out here to help everybody because everybody seems to be going through a tough time, especially during tax season on Twitter.
Yeah, well, that's nice of you to say. I don't know if I'm always compassionate. I have my weak
Sure,
moments. But
sure. I'm looking at the bright side, though. I'm talking about the bright side.
well, thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, sure. I mean, you see people struggling and you think maybe I can do or say something to help, or maybe it's a one-on-one conversation. It's a chat in the DMs. It's giving somebody my phone number. You can text me if it's bad, or, maybe just making fun. There was one tax season, maybe it's been 2 or 3 years ago now, where I don't know. I was on a tear though. I had a meme every other week. That's actually that, now that I recall, that's where people started paying attention to me, because I put something out there about how everybody makes fun of Drake tax software, which is my software. And I get where people are going, but it works well for me. And that's how I made friends with Adam Markowitz. But I remember that now. But then I was like, oh, well, I have a meme for this and a meme for that. And I think that was probably during COVID, when there was just tax law changes and Congress is meeting to monkey with everything every 5 minutes. So
yeah, you were having a lot of fun with that. The whole like 80%, 20%, or 90% this and 10% that stuff.
wow,
That
you
was
have
fun.
a good memory.
I saw a lot of tax Twitter, especially when I was writing the tax accounts anthem. So
Sure.
I've been paying a lot of attention to it. I was just trying to navigate my way around the world here. So you were one of those North Stars of people that I thought were doing things right. And like I said, you seem to be caring more about the others than you did about yourself on there too. And it may have been for selfish purposes. You may have been having a lot of fun doing it, but it seemed like you were really out there as a facilitator. But at this time, you're also a solo practitioner, right? You didn't have any employees, or did you have any employees at that stage?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So a lot of people on Twitter, it's the same thing. And
Right.
this is their watering hole. This is the way for people to get their outlet. They don't have a full office that they can vent to, or they don't have people that they can go to necessarily. Like, they have those outlets, or they get dealt a pretty bad email from one client, and then another client comes in, and it's just like one thing piled on another. And you can't just vent to the people that are closest to you, because they get tired of it after a certain point. But you can vent to people that are like-minded and like you, and go out there. And that's sort of what tax Twitter became, especially during COVID, was that watering hole, or that void that you can yell out into. And some people may get aggressive, some people may get salty, or whatever it might be. But then there's those that are kind of threading it together and saying it's going to be better. The sun will come out again, right? And the sun always does come out again, whether it's really hard rain or whatever it might be. Sun comes out again, everything's great. But I want to continue with your growth as a practitioner. And at what point did you feel like, I don't want to do this alone anymore? You've been doing a lot of things, you're meeting a lot of new people. There's tax Twitter, there's now your podcast too. Did you enjoy this community that you're starting to help build and to start to help cultivate? Like, why not continue to go it alone?
Yeah, so I think a few reasons. One would be really all of the changes that came through during COVID through tax law. So again, I was a solo tax practitioner, and it it was just a lot. It was a lot. And here I am trying to communicate regularly to my clients, newsletters, videos, phone calls, etc. Here's what's going on. What I ended up doing, I think a lot of firms grew a lot during COVID because there was just so much work out there, so much need. I actually shrunk. And I shrunk intentionally. Clients were at all difficult. If I thought they were being unreasonable, if I thought they were being unkind, I just fired them, like without hesitation. I shed a lot of clients for the sake of my mental health. And I could have gone in a different direction, right? So many people, I think I was probably one of the few folks that shrunk during COVID. When I sort of came out of that mode, okay, like I've let go of clients that really, those relationships don't serve me personally or professionally. I have this core group of really good clients and I can keep growing this. But I think I realized at that point, again, maybe this is my next midlife journey, that while I enjoy helping clients, I also really enjoy teaching and educating and mentoring. And there's very little of that in a solo environment. And I thought, I'm really missing out here on being able to bring folks who are younger in the industry along. And also, I'm missing out on being able to leverage their time, energy, knowledge so that I can do less of the work. Like, it's mutually beneficial, right? How nice would it be for me to give somebody a job? So that was something I knew I wanted to do. And I also saw that probably anybody that does what we now call CAS work, client accounting, or however you phrase it.
Right up.
Right up, exactly. When I did that so many years ago, it was very manual. It wasn't overly profitable. It was just kind of the thing you did for clients. But now it's a very, very different environment. So I realized that if I wanted to grow, I wasn't that the way to grow was that way, to get back into working a lot with businesses and being able to resolve these issues for them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and their accounting records being the heart of that. And so I thought, well, I know debits and credits. I can look at a set of financial statements and tell you it's wrong, right? But actually getting into, accounting software platform is like totally outside my scope. I don't want to really have to relearn QuickBooks from scratch or decide if I even want to use QuickBooks or et cetera. I was a sole practitioner for a decade. I can complain a lot about the accounting industry, but I will say the opportunities feel limitless. I was in one mode for a very long time and decided I'll just do something different today. And even had I not found a partner to do this with, I still could have done that. So if there's somebody listening and maybe they're on the fence about starting their own firm or redoing things in their firm, you can do it. If I did it, you can do it.